Thanks again for coming today. It's really nice to meet
You
you.
too. Thank you so much for having me here today, Kate.
Tell me a little bit about what's lighting you up creatively, what's going on for you creatively right now.
Up until 2020, I would have told you I'm a stay at home mom of two teenage girls. And man, has my life changed in the last 5 years. I am now a professional artist and published author. And all of that change really began at the darkest point in my life in many ways. Leading up to 2020, which was a bad enough year for all of us in the world, I and my extended family lost 8 loved ones in 6 years. And I was really going through a period of extreme grief and stress and anxiety. And I had given up my career to be a stay at home mom. And so I didn't really have a good outlet for myself. And during the lockdowns of the pandemic, and while the Black Lives Matter protests and everything were happening in the world, especially here in Southern California, I decided to try and find a little bit of respite by clicking on an ad for free watercolor lessons online. And unlike all of the other efforts I had attempted to find peace and joy just for myself, watercolor really just took that hum of anxiety and stress that was running through my body and it calmed it all down. And it allowed
Mhm.
me this quiet meditative time to focus on something beautiful that I was creating for no other purpose than my own joy. And it totally changed my mindset on what I wanted to have to be proud of for myself as an individual, not as a mom, not as a wife, but just for my goals for me. And following that watercolor adventure that I started in July of 2020, I went from painting once every couple weeks to painting pretty much every day and then painting several hours a day. And my brain started to really fire on new levels. And I decided by 2021 that I actually wanted to go back and get my master's in writing because all of my creative juices were flowing and I was finding so much joy creating watercolors. And one of my personal goals had always been to write a novel. So I was like, I wanted to get back into writing full time and really dedicate myself to the craft of that. And by October of 2022, I had finished my master's program and I'd written the first 10,000 words of my novel. And this January, it actually came out. And it's been such a joy to be able to share it with people.
Were you always a creative person when you were, I'm thinking back to when you were a little girl. Were there flashes or hints that this was who you were way back then?
I was always creative. I always loved storytelling and reading books and sharing my point of view through the written form. But I would have called myself crafty and not necessarily artistic all the way up until probably just the last couple of years. Even after I had been commissioned to do watercolor paintings for people, I was hesitant to call myself an artist. But now I have fully embraced that those of us who create anything are artists. And I love just really putting that label on myself because I it gives me permission to explore and create in all different areas and really carve out time and space in my life for just dedicated art time because I am an artist now and I am a writer and I am committed to always being that for the rest of my life at this point because of the joy it brings me.
I can feel energetically a pretty significant difference between the word crafty and the word artist. Or like there is definitely, they're related, but they do energetically feel distinct. What was that distinction for you, and why did you separate yourself away from the artist side of things?
I was raised by parents who saw that I was a highly academic person, and they always encouraged me to pursue those academics because I was successful at them. And so I have been led to believe that if you pursued success through academics, you weren't artistic, that they were two separate categories. I also had artistic people in my life who had studied art formally. I have a grandmother who got her master's in mathematics and art and painting. And then I have an aunt who is an artist and a sister who is an artist. And I think I always just classified that they were allowed to be artists because they were formally trained and they studied it. And everything I was doing was just what I felt like doing in the moment and a little DIY project or something. And then after really learning watercolor for a couple of years, the person that I learned the bulk of my watercolor skill from online is a woman named Sarah Cray. She's incredibly talented and she's an entrepreneur who started Let's Make Art back, I think, in 2017 or 2018. And she really is so encouraging with everybody who is learning from her to accept that they are artists from the very beginning and to really take off the labels of needing to have formal training to be considered an artist. And I really started to embrace that more and more, that I was creating art and that made me an artist. That's the only requirement there was.
Doesn't have to be more than that.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Because I ask that because I think we do that to ourselves. It's one of the reasons I started this show, is because I just heard so many people over and over again going, "Oh, I wish I could do that." And I'd be like, If you're wishing to do it, like it's that inside of you that's wishing you to do it. You wouldn't care about it if it wasn't in you."
exactly, that spark.
Yeah, and we're taught to shove that spark down or to dim it or to snuff it out even in a lot of cases. And I think that's what in the pre-chat before we started recording today, we referenced a little bit some of the sort of global geopolitical events that are going on right now. And I've been pointing to those for years, talking about we're glitching, humanity's glitching because of, and I've thought about this my whole entire life because I've also been somebody who's been an artist like since I got here. And but I see so clearly how we just don't feel like it's okay for us to really be who we really are. And that's what the glitch is
Yeah,
about. We're disconnected from this incredible thing that's inside of us.
yeah, I
Yeah.
couldn't
I'm
agree
wondering
more,
if you,
and I think it's really heartbreaking to me to see. I'm a big believer that progress is good, and we all should, as a collective humanity, work together for positive progress, but it's really heartbreaking to me to see personally AI taking on these creative roles for people, because I think that they are really robbing themselves of the peace and joy that they can get from the experience of finding that spark within themselves and pursuing that passion as far as it will take them. And just outsourcing it to AI to make everything move faster doesn't bring us any healthier experiences within our own bodies. And I think we are in a time of crisis politically. I happen to live in the greater Los Angeles area. So currently we have a lot happening right here on our doorstep with the ICE protests and our president stepping over the people in power in California to bring in the military to fight what everybody that I know who has seen it firsthand is saying are very peaceful protests. And when we've gone through these situations in the past, in the 60s and the 70s, during the Cold War, expressions of art are the way that we've healed, the way that we've really shown that there's something greater within all of humanity than these fights over political issues. Or we can express the beauty on one side of an issue and the pain that the other side of it might be causing in a way that could be better understood than a dialogue between people who are unwilling to see eye to eye. So yeah, I think we are glitching when we are not recognizing that it could be art, it could be creation, any creative pursuits, it could be music and film that bring us through this and together more than anything. And we shouldn't be outsourcing that to anyone.
I think that what you're pointing to is really important. Art and creativity and having a creative outlet is by its very nature, by the very nature of what you're doing when you're engaging in those activities, there's a healing quality to it. There's a brainwave state that you go into when you're in that flow state. I had a 3-hour long pottery class this morning. I do it every Wednesday morning. and I get I can't believe how fast 3 hours go by. And today, for 3 hours, I basically made tiny little feathers. I'm making this crow that I've been working on for weeks. How do we find our way to those practices in these times that feel so urgent or emergent? And I don't mean that in a like stuff's maybe I do mean that in stuff in a sense that stuff is coming out, but also it feels like we're in a crisis. Maybe that's the better word for it. Like, how important is it to make time for creativity during times of crisis? How do we justify it? How do we reorient our thoughts so that we're not telling ourselves the same old stories about what it is and how useless it is or how not important it is or how we should be focusing on more important, urgent things?
Recently listened to an episode with a guest of yours. I think his name was Ben Rennie, and he said it so eloquently about how anxiety is the body's expression of fear and the antidote is curiosity. And I just loved that because
Mm.
creativity and exploration are ways that we can really sink into that curiosity, and I do think it is urgent for all of us. When I was going through all of those significant losses in my family, of course, I was going to intense therapy. Of course, I was making sure I was getting regular exercise and I was watching my diet. But I really found the greatest healing when I put into practice on a daily basis, starting my day with activities that are healing to me rather than starting my day with doom scrolling, because that was what I was doing and it was really not helping me at all. I am somebody who likes to stay on top of the news and know what's happening. I always want to be well informed. But starting my day that way was starting me off on a very negative place. Many of your audience members are probably familiar with Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. She really
Mhm.
recommends writing 3 pages in a journal every day. I do that. Based on her recommendation, I absolutely start my day with 3 pages of journal writing, and it just helps clear out all that space in my brain, all those worries, all those stressors, those little things like, oh, you have an appointment today at 5 o'clock, and I can put it on the page and not think about it for the next 12 hours until that happens or whatever. And then I also started doing daily sketch and watercolor exercises that are about 10 to 15 minutes long. Following another artist, Sarah the Mint Gardener, Sarah Simon, does these little just daily drawing practices. And so I keep my sketchbook right next to my journal, and every day I follow another exercise, and by setting myself up with a writing exercise and an artistic exercise, I am setting myself up in a positive mindset, a creative mindset, and one that says I can put more joy and beauty into this world than starting with doom scrolling and all of the negativity that is ready and waiting to fill me up if I let it. So I encourage people to find whatever creative outlets like writing and drawing, or maybe it's photography. Maybe it's taking that walk in that beautiful place where you can see the sunset or find some flowers, really connecting with our natural world in a way that we can creatively explore it. But anything other than allowing the negativity of the world to fill us up.
I think it's a fine line. It's a fine line because I feel like I totally agree with you. We can't get like that negativity like a vortex quality to it, and it can pull you in, and suddenly you've taken a nosedive with your scrolling with your feed, and you're at the bottom of your feed, and it's all over, and it's terrible, and it's all. And then that sets the context for your day, and that kind of is like the vibe and the energy and the feeling tone of your whole body.
Absolutely.
So you can't do that. But you also I think that you can't ignore what's happening, and I think that's where we're having a lot of problems is, okay, I can't ignore what's happening, and I can't just focus on it, and I can't not focus on it at all, and I think our creativity offers us a place to be curious about how am I feeling about some of these things and what's coming up, and I think that's where some of the great art
Yeah.
that comes out of these revolutions that humans have gone through over the centuries comes from people expressing their fear and expressing their feelings, their big, ugly feelings that maybe aren't allowed as part of that system, the same system that raised us to believe that you have to be an academic
Yeah.
and you have to follow the rules and you have to. It's that same system that's, oh no, don't feel your
Right,
feelings.
right.
So it's a fine line.
It is. I don't think people should be sticking their head in the sand by any means. It doesn't serve any of us well for us to act like ostriches and just let the world spin out of control. But I do think we can explore our feelings about it and explore what the best role each individual one of us can play in making this a better world and expressing what we think would help make it a better place. Some people are meant to be physically protesting. Some people are meant to write those op-ed pieces. Some people are meant to be contacting their local politicians on the phone or writing postcards. There's so many ways that we can get involved. And by being open-minded and creative and positive, I think we can find what that role is for each of us that's appropriate for who we are. But yeah, if we just ignore it all and stick our head in the sand, then that is how certain people get too much power, unfortunately.
It just all points to how much responsibility we have to take for our own inner landscapes. If you're somebody who's lived your whole entire life kind of buying into the story that you're a certain thing and you're only allowed to be a certain thing, and you never confront that, and you never say, yeah, but what if I take this master's course? Or what if I take this watercolor course? Or what if I take a pottery course? Or what if I go and join a community group? Or if you never allow yourself to play with those things, then you're not actually questioning those beliefs that are given to you to keep you stuck. And then you're not able to bring your gift into the world. And I think what you said a minute ago is really important. And it was about everybody finding their own gift they have to offer. And I think we question ourselves. We're like, it's important. I should be on the front line. How dare I sit here paint watercolors today? I should be on the front lines facing the bullets and the protests. I believe that if we're all listening to our gut, we're all called. There are definitely people who are called to do that.
Absolutely.
And that's wonderful. And we need them.
Thank
And then, like you
goodness.
said, there are people who are called, like there are some amazing historians who are writing this all down for us as it goes and providing context for us
Yes.
about this. I'm thinking about Heather Cox Richardson,
Absolutely.
right? There are amazing people who are, I wouldn't, there's nothing you could pay me to do to learn the history that way and write it all down every night. Like she writes that letter every day. That's her calling. But she's free to follow her calling. And I feel like when we're not, that's the work, and we get caught up in believing, oh, maybe I maybe it would be selfish or indulgent to do the thing that I love to do the most. But actually, the thing that you love to do the most is probably the thing that everybody else needs,
Exactly,
right?
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did find that when I started sharing my watercolors back in 2020, because it was bringing me so much joy and I just wanted to show the journey that I was on. I found that people were finding more joy themselves, just seeing that coming up in their feed and asking about how I was learning it and asking if I could, as I started to paint like pet portraits, I could paint their pets. And it just became a way to open up conversations with people who had been in a very dark place before that. And yeah, just exploring
Yeah.
and expressing myself through this simple art at watercolor at the very beginning was already changing the landscape of my feed, my social media feed, and what other people who I was connected to were seeing as well. And I do think I'm so grateful for those people like Heather Cox Richardson, and also like I grew up in a very small town here in Southern California, but my student that I went to school with is now a congressman who is regularly fighting on behalf of our local population where we grew up, but also especially the Latina vote that is happening, that is growing and growing. Pete Aguilar is regularly talking to the people on the Hill to try and make the right choices, and thank goodness that he was called to do that, that he was one of the youngest mayors in our area and one of the youngest congressmen in our area, and I could never like you said, nobody could pay me to be a politician. To me,
Mhm.
that's a big red target on your back. No, thank you. I have no desire. But I'm so glad that he is because he is representing my voice out there and he's representing all of our voices out there, pushing back where it needs to be pushed back. But I
And that's the thing that happens when people follow their
yes.
callings, right? Is that there's everybody can go and do their part of it.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to you about your book, which is called Absorbed,
Yes.
right? Yeah. So I want to talk to you about that, but I also want to know a little while we're here about callings. You told us about how you come from a more academic background, and you're raising your daughters, and all of a sudden you fell into watercolor, went back to study writing, and then this book came out of you. If you were like a bird's eye looking down and had to describe, oh, this is what Jamie's calling is. What are you learning about what your calling is? Where are you at with that right now?
Oh, so it's so apropos that you asked that because my book is about a 17-year-old girl and it's a coming of age story. And I happen to have currently a 16 and an 18-year-old daughter. And when I started down the path of writing this book, I wanted to be able to open up dialogues between moms now and their teenage daughters, but I've even heard from some moms that it helps them to open the dialogues with their teenage sons as well. And I have a 16-year-old nephew who read it and he really enjoyed it. But about the exact same issues that are going on in this world right now, despite that I set the book in 1996, because I think people forget how many of the issues we dealt with in the 90s that are still an issue now. One of the main issues in the book is the issue of sexual consent and what that looks like, that not saying no is not the same as saying yes. And then also reproductive rights for individuals. Back in the 90s, Planned Parenthoods were being bombed. And I think people like to forget that is a reality that we've been dealing with for many decades. And being able to write about these issues that are so very relevant now, but through the lens, of a more like vintage story through the pop music and pop culture movies of the 90s. Clueless meets Baywatch at the community pool. It's a fun story
Oh,
of lifeguards and this young girl's first experience as a lifeguard and getting put in a position to work with one of her crushes and, all of her becoming in this story. But have it come out now so that the moms now can say, I understand what you're dealing with. The world is telling you that you shouldn't have choices about your own body. That the world is telling you that men's rights can matter more than women's rights sometimes. And I got the opportunity to teach my main character how to deal with her stress through a creative outlet and have a mentor art teacher who helps her learn watercolor to do it. And so it's been really my calling has started down this road of learning watercolor that led me to write this book that is all about the political issues that are going on in the world around here for my daughters in the world that they are becoming women. And it's bringing up those exact same topics in the story.
I'm often curious with I'm not a writer that way. Like I have a book in me, but it's not a novel.
Okay.
Like it's a different kind of book.
Sure.
And so when people are writing characters, I'm always really fascinated about your relationship to them. Do they become like another person that you know in your life? Was she like your daughter? Was she like you? How do you relate to the characters?
That's a fun question. I would say that every character in the novel is an amalgamation of several people that I knew. And yes, the main character does have some similar qualities to me in that I happen to have been a lifeguard in the 90s. So it was real fun to go back in time and write from what I knew about that experience. It made it easy. They say, write what you know, then it makes it easier to
Yeah.
create the story. But she's not only me. I worked with a lot of different lifeguards. I also was friends with a lot of different girls in high school who suffered from some severe insecurities like I did. And I see that. I have beautiful, smart, talented daughters who also are not nice to themselves sometimes when they look in the mirror, don't like how their body feels in certain clothes, especially bathing suits, what women do, right? And so it was really easy for me to build these characters as conglomerations or amalgamations of many people. And then, yeah, I'm a very tactile person. I have Pinterest boards for my characters. I actually built an actual scrapbook with pictures from the 90s to really build these characters out, and they became individuals in my mind where and then I even was working with a writing coach on my full revision of the book, and she by the time we finished, she said, "I feel like we could walk into a mall right now and all of these characters would be there in real life form. Because that was such a huge compliment to me because that's how I felt about it. In my brain, they were real. They were absolutely real. They were having conversations in my head. So I just had to get it out at that.
Did you talk to
Oh,
them?
yeah.
Do you ask them you ask them questions?
Absolutely, and they start
And
to come into your dreams, and I found that they came most alive when I was physically active, so I would be walking the dogs, and I would start hearing the dialogues that they were having with one another, and I'd have to, like, take out my voice recorder and start having it dictate really quickly my thoughts as they were talking in my head, and then I actually put a bicycle, like a stationary bike and a treadmill in my office that had, like, desks on them so that I could be moving while I was writing, because for whatever reason, these characters were always moving, they were always active, and they came more to life as I was moving.
I think that's common that we have and Ben talked about that too, right?
Mhm,
The ideas that come to you in the shower, the ideas that come to you when you're moving. And I've always found that one of the trickiest parts of my creativity is I will go out for an hour long walk in the forest,
mhm.
and halfway through all these things come to me and I'm like, I want to sit down and like record something. Like I'm thinking about the intro of an episode, or I'm thinking about something I want to say, or something I want to write. And then that's a great solution to have the treadmill and the bike there so you can get that going.
Yeah.
But how do you, when you're just in your normal life and things hit you, do you carry around a book or a recorder so that you can capture that stuff? What are your best tips for that? The second part to that question is it's almost like catching something to then come work on it
Mhm.
later. How do you then capture that when you get back to your creative space without losing it?
I do find that I'm always gonna have my phone on me. As a mom of 2 teenagers, I always wanna be reachable, so it's just always gonna be on me
Yeah.
no matter what. So the dictation works really well. But also, I find that if I have an idea in my brain, I might sort of spit out as much of the dialogue or whatever it is, or the characterization is whatever it is, but then I might also on my Spotify playlist for the book, add a new song. And remember, this is the song she's got to be listening to in the car. When she's really angsty, she goes and buys like a thing of Marlboro Reds. And I'm not a smoker, but I like type in Marlboro Reds and I like take a picture of it so that it's in my pictures on my phone so that I can look at that. And then I might, if that she's talking about food she's eating or whatever, I will actually go buy that food. I hadn't had Mr. Pibb in I can't even I don't drink soda anymore, but man, when I was a teenager, I would drink all that garbage. And I would actually like make a note, like in my grocery list, buy Mr. Pibb, buy an Abba so I could taste it, I could smell it, I could like really get all of my senses into this story through those ideas. So I'm adding it into my whole life. I actually like my idea might be popping up on my Pinterest board and my Spotify playlist, like, it's everywhere, and then I dive right into it. I have my Sonos speaker that I'm playing the music in the background from the playlist, and I have the food on my desk, and when I was describing her watercoloring in the book, I'm actually watercoloring the image right along with her in real time so that I can describe what's happening with the water on the paper and with the brush and with the paint. Like I said, I'm very technical. I bring it all in, all the senses.
It almost seems this is a bit esoteric, but it almost seems like she does exist or they do exist in another plane
Yeah. Yeah.
and that we're connecting to them. Would you say that?
Absolutely.
Is that real?
I
Yeah.
think Maya Angelou, it might have been someone else, but I'm pretty sure it was Maya Angelou, and correct me if I'm wrong, who said that she would be taking a walk and she would get an idea and it was like a train was running by her and she had to grab her pen and a piece of paper to catch that train and get the train down all on the page. And I do think it's like they are existing on this parallel universe to ours and in our creative brain, that spark that's in our soul when we decide to pursue it is that place, that little link, that bridge that takes us to that place and allows us to get in touch with that parallel universe where they do exist and we can play with them and we can explore their world and then put it either into our artwork, put it into our music, put it into our story that we're writing in the book. I absolutely agree. I think they do exist somewhere.
Was there a big surprise or something that you really learned from her, from your character? Did she show you something you didn't know that surprised you?
I think the thing that surprised me the most is when I sat down originally to write the story, I was going back in time, like I said. And so, therefore, the original parenting that was happening in my book between her, the main character, and her mother, she is a single mother in the story, looked very much like the parenting that I had experienced as a teenage girl. And as the story developed, I got this experience of seeing what this person needed from a parent rather than what I got from a parent. Does that make sense? So I got
Yeah.
to provide the parenting that this character needed through my story instead of what I had known in my own experience. And that was a real evolution in the story that I hadn't expected to happen because it really allowed me to show, like I said, more modern moms that we have an opportunity to be way more empathetic to our teenagers and the mistakes
Mhm.
that they are bound and determined to make than maybe we experienced when we were teenagers ourselves. That we can really be far more open to listening, curious about what they're doing rather than angry or afraid of what they might be doing, but be curious about it and by being able to have the evolution of a maternal character be more like what we are capable of doing now as parents, showing that empathy, it was really wonderful and unexpected for me. Yeah.
What was the impact of that on you as a parent and as a grown-up teenager yourself?
It really helped me to sink into those feelings of curiosity, then embrace all of that more as a mom, and to recognize when I'm getting frustrated, that it is coming from a place of fear. And so to rein that in a little bit and recognize that just like my main character had no intention by any means of making the mistakes that she makes in the story. Her intention was always just to find out who she was and how to exist in the world amongst her peers and get the experiences she was hoping to have, the positive experiences. It allowed me to see my daughters and their peers, their friends through a more curious lens and that they have no bad intentions really when they're setting out to explore the world around them.
Have they read your book, your
Mm.
daughters?
This is a point of contention with me, but I think it's pretty common. Their expression to their friends have read it. As I mentioned, my nephew read it. A lot of our extended family, and I've had several book clubs with local moms who have read it. But my daughters have said they see too much of me in the main character. They know what the story
Mm.
is. And to see their mom go through these experiences of basically date rape and having to make an appointment at Planned Parenthood and a real traumatic experience with a severe accident in the pool. They don't like the idea of imagining their mom in those scenarios because they can't disconnect me from the main character. So
Sure,
I can appreciate
sure.
that, but I hope at some point they will because I think they'll understand me and why I wanted to write it a lot better instead of believing it's a part of my history because it's not. It's totally fiction.
There's a certain stage in our development where we just believe that our parents are a certain thing and we don't want any other information coming in to cloud
Yeah.
that. You've gone through a fairly significant personal evolution over the last 5 years. I think that's pretty clear. How has that affected your how you thought your life was going to unfold? How have your relationships changed? Has it affected your marriage? Because when you change the way you dance, everyone else around you has to change the way that they dance. And so I'm just wondering, how's that all been?
Absolutely. I would say it's been incredibly positive in so many unexpected ways. Um, just to start with, my daughters, of course, always looked up to me as their mom, this person who was always there for them and trying to care for them. But I loved that they loved people like Taylor Swift, who is a great entrepreneur and follows her dreams and achieves great success. And by setting this goal for myself and achieving it, I got to see them watch me achieve my dreams and believe that it could happen for themselves. And like to have that have time as the oldest just graduated high school last week and she's going away to school in Manhattan this fall. And I believe that a big part of that from Southern California to Manhattan, that confidence to do it comes from the fact that she saw me just this year have my book come out and it was scary and it was wonderful. And it didn't go exactly the way I wanted to go, but it's gone really great. And so it's all a journey that we're on, an adventure, and we should just dive in as and do the best we can and see where it takes us. And so I've loved that in terms of my relationship with my girls. They've been so proud. They've been my biggest advocate. My husband also, we've been together since the 90s. We met in college. And some of the characters, even in my book, even though he and I didn't know each other in high school, there are elements of his personality in some of those characters as well. And some of the concerts that she goes to in the book are similar to ones that he and I might have gone to in college. And he has been also just a huge advocate this whole time because he saw the dark place
Mm.
that I was in and how dim my personal light was during those stages of those years of loss and as we were in the pandemic, and how I was able to blossom and grow and find joy. And he's just fully supported and encouraged it. So I'm so lucky. I do think it has had to come with some adjustments though, because just because I wanted to write a novel didn't mean that laundry stopped or people didn't need to eat dinner or carpools didn't need to happen. And so everybody in our family had to get behind the fact that my dreams were being pursued, and that took time and it took discipline around schedules, and that's been really positive as well. I'd say my extended family has also been really supportive, but everything is a stage that we go through. And right now, my mother is going through a difficult stage, and they call it the sandwich generation. I'm in a position of caring for my mother now, and her wanting independence, but me feeling like I need to have a more direct role in a lot of the decisions she's making. And she's had positive reaction to my becoming a published author, but I think also a little bit of disappointment that I don't have as much free time to go to lunch with her,
Mm.
out with her all the time like I might have before I decided to prioritize these goals for myself. So it's all an adjustment, but for the most part, everybody's been so supportive and encouraging.
That's great.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about the two different worlds that you inhabit creatively. So, painting and writing are very
Mhm.
different, and yet creativity is a language.
Mhm.
And so, how does the language of creativity change for you when you're changing channels, as it were? And is there overlap? And does one teach you about the other? And how do they connect for you?
First of all, I love that idea that creativity is a language. I think that is so accurate. And they say that a child that learns a foreign language, their ability to understand the world grows, their intelligence grows. Same thing if they learn to play a musical instrument, it's like learning another language. And again, it increases their intellect. And I do think being able to explore things creatively is like learning another language. And just like when I lived in Austria for a semester of college and I learned to speak German, I do feel it's very similar in terms of my painting and my writing because either one of them, I'm starting with a blank page and I'm getting a vision in
Mm.
my mind of what I want to be represented on that page. And it's all about taking an approach to that page with intention and with patience and with allowing it to evolve the way that it needs to become the piece of art that it should be, whether it is a watercolor painting or it is a chapter of a book, whatever it is, I'm approaching it in the same way. I get the idea in my mind and I have to create it with intentionality.
Are you leading that process, or does it feel like you're being led by something
Oh, it's a
else?
push and pull. It's like the tide. It's constantly
Yeah,
tugging
yeah,
in both
okay.
directions, in which I get an idea of what it should be, and then it pulls back and says, no, it needs more of this. And so I give it more of that. And watercolor is the perfect medium for me because I am such a water drawn person that like the idea of the tide is so natural to me. Also, I need to always be around the water. And yeah, I do think it takes over in my brain in the same way that learning a new language, you can start to dream in it and you have no intention of dreaming, but it just starts to have existence in your mind. It takes up space and you have to give it the freedom to tell you what needs to come onto that page.
How does that all connect to the idea of intuition? Where do you feel like
Yeah.
intuition fits into all of this?
Yeah, I think just like we feel stress, just like we feel sadness, just like we feel joy in our deepest gut and through all of the cells of our body, when we allow ourselves to creatively explore things, we're allowing our soul really to express what it needs to. If you have to tell yourself, no, I'm not listening to this. I'm doing exactly what I was told. This is where I'm supposed to go, following a direction on a map or whatever. But your intuition is telling you, no, this is the route you should take. The same way that a flock of birds can all know to fly exactly in the same direction, like they all speak to each other. Our body knows what it needs, it knows what it wants, and to let ourselves listen to it is something that we have to practice. But I think we can really get so much from following that intuition and learning to trust the evolution of whatever it is we're pursuing by following that intuition in the first place.
Has that always been easy for you? Have you always had it like an intuition and then been like, "Yep, I'm gonna follow it," or did you have to kinda learn how to suspend your disbelief and be like, "Okay, this doesn't really make sense on paper, but I'm gonna do it anyway," or because some people come into it very it's very almost like it's just easy. They come in and they're like, "I've always followed my intuition," and some people are like, "I don't even have intuition," only to discover that they do, but they had to practice getting it out. Where were you on that
I would
continuum?
say that I naturally am a more intuitive person. I do think it has been a part of me my whole life, but I would say that there are circumstances in my life in which maybe I trusted the others around me more to make the decisions and got out of practice in it. And I needed to go back to following my intuition because that wasn't the route that I should be taking. That wasn't the pursuit that I should be following. So I think anybody can practice it and get back into it more for sure. But um, like my husband and I are both logical, but he does not paint, he does not write creative stories. He builds spreadsheets. That is one of his creative outlets is he can make spreadsheets do incredibly amazing things that I'm blown away.
Thank goodness
Yeah,
for people like him,
exactly.
and I will never be one of
Exactly,
them.
but so he has very different approaches to the way
Yeah.
he lives than I do, and being in a partnership with him for 26 years, married for 23 years, we've had to learn when his intuition is the one that should be valid versus mine and how it will work for both of us. So again, back to that like ebb and flow, right? His gut might tell him one thing and my gut might tell me another, and we might make a decision together to follow one versus the other.
Do you have any practices or rituals that you do to keep your intuition sharp or communicate with it so that it because to me, and I ask that because to me, it is a call and response
Mhm.
relationship. My creativity, my intuition. If I'm not paying attention, it's almost
Yeah.
silent. But the minute I show up and I say, "Okay, show me something," it's, "Oh, there's this and there's that and there's we can go over here and there's this one over there." And I'm like it's like there's so many answers. They're everywhere. But it doesn't it will never, like, claw its way through
Right.
something to get to me to get my that's not how it works.
I agree.
And so in a way, I if I want more access to a deeper level of creativity and intuition, I have to work for it.
Yeah.
And so I have my things that I do, but I wonder if what are the things that you do?
I know that a lot of people have found success tapping into that inner voice through meditation, for example. I love yoga. I love meditative practices. I don't personally get in touch with my intuition very much that way. I do have those aha moments in the shower or whatever. But for me, the greatest way that I experience allowing myself to really listen to what my inner voice is telling me is through a very meditative art practice where you are paying attention, but it becomes almost rote. The activity of it
Yep.
becomes almost rote, like washing the dishes too. You don't need to pay that much attention to washing the dishes, right? You're just moving and doing or walking on the treadmill. And when I get into this repetitive motion, often it's with my paintbrush doing something very rote, but it's very calm and my breathing is slow, my heart rate is slow. My brain will start to just sing to me. It'll just start telling me all the things that I need to hear. And it's allowing everything else to be turned off, really, is what I have to
Mm,
the only way it
yeah.
happens. But I don't get that through
Yeah.
meditation, really. Some people do. Maybe I don't do it, but maybe I should try TM.
I think it changes throughout our lives. One of the things I've really noticed is like sometimes I'll do the morning pages for 3 or 4 months at a time, and that really works for me, and then it stops
Mhm,
working. And then I'm like, "Okay, I need to switch my practice now." So then I'll get up and I'll just play with pigment
mhm.
from my watercolor palette. I'm not even doing anything. And then that kind of gets me going, and then that stops working, and then I'm transcribing my dreams, and I'm
Mhm.
like, I personally have to keep it moving. It's not like there's one practice this is
Yeah.
it. This is the channel opener. I think we have to be that's part of also the playful nature of creativity is I'm gonna see how much you're paying
Yes.
attention. I'll speak to you here today, but then I'll go hide and seek. It's like a big game of hide and seek.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I know that changing the path that I walk on, to taking the walk at the beach instead of in my neighborhood, going to a concert
Yeah.
with my husband and feeling the music in my body, really, like going to a concert is a whole body experience in a way that having some headphones in it's not the same. And so those kinds of really connecting with the physical world make a big difference for me also. Yeah, you're
Hmm.
absolutely right. There's not just one key way, but you gotta
Yeah.
keep your
Well,
body firing on all
and
cylinders.
there are different personality types too. There are personality types where, or even maybe they're archetypes where I'm thinking of the master. There's the person who's just at 20 years old. I went to art school and I'm devoting my entire life to acrylic landscapes or oil landscapes or whatever it is. And that's what they've dedicated their whole life to. And they become a master. And that's their way. That really works
And
for
that's
them.
beautiful for them.
And
It's
then,
never been
and
my
that's
way.
beautiful for them. Yeah, me neither. I was talking to my pottery instructor this morning and we were laughing because we're essentially the same person, but we were like, I do basket weaving and I do sewing and I do textile stuff and I'm watercolor and I'm doing acrylic things and I have a loom. What is wrong? I used to think there was actually something really wrong with
Oh.
me. And I got that feedback from the adults in my world when I was a teenager-ish age. You have to pick something. You can't do all of the things. You have to get good. And I had to, but I think what I've come to in the wisdom of my older age is that there really is no one
Yeah.
way to climb the mountain. It's just what is the way that works for you and to just be listening because that could change at any
I
time.
completely agree with
Yeah.
you, and you can see behind me a wall art that I've created before I even found watercolor. My body just needed to express itself in creating this piece, and I do flower pressing. I just got all the stuff that I need to try some jewelry making. I do those things too, for sure. I dabble in the different creative
Yeah.
because I wanna feel and experience making something in a little different way. It doesn't mean that I'm stopped creating my stories and my watercolors, but it allows me to really connect and tap into different parts of the creativity as well. And I
Yeah.
agree, it's completely necessary for me. Maybe I just have a little. My husband and my daughter are ADHD. Maybe I have a little deficit in being able to stay focused. I do believe in the theory of 10,000 hours that you can really master something by putting in the time. But I don't think I could have ever been the person who just sat down with a musical instrument and just did 10,000 hours of practice. I
No.
also needed to
No.
go out and try a skateboard and learn how to snowboard and paint and whatever it was that I felt like doing. Otherwise, I would just give up.
But again, I'm back to I'm thinking about your congressman and then the lawyers and the spreadsheet people and the like. Thank
Yeah.
goodness that we all love a different thing because now there's a philharmonic over there that can make music for us, and there's this concert venue that's gonna. Thank goodness that we all have our own weird ways that don't make sense of
100%.
expressing it, right?
Yes, yes, I agree. Yeah.
Okay, so there's two more things that I want to just share with you. One of them is at the beginning of every episode, before I get on with my guest, I'll pull a little angel card out of this gorgeous little wooden bowl I have of these cards. They're just the little tiny rectangle angel cards. And I say this little prayer to creativity where I ask it to help me get out of the way so that I can ask what needs to be asked, so that you can say what needs to be said, so that the listener can hear what they need to hear. And that this conversation is like in service to the emergence of more of this creative intelligence that comes from us, because that is what we need more than anything on earth right now. That's what humanity needs to resolve and heal our wounds and take the next step in our evolution.
Absolutely.
And that is what all of my work is in service to, whether it's by myself at my watercolors or in my pottery class or in this conversation with you. And then I pull a little card and it's like the guardian of this conversation. And I usually share it with the guest at the end of the show. The word that I pulled for us today was birth,
Yeah.
which I just feels so perfect because we touched on so many ways today in this conversation about how like the struggle of birth, it's really hard and you've got to figure out how to bring this new thing in the world and everything's going to change. And there's so many ways that I think that was the perfect word. But what do you
I
think?
love
Did
that. I
you, do you like,
absolutely love that,
yeah,
and I think you're absolutely right. Birth requires so much personal sacrifice and communal sacrifice, and
yeah.
yet it creates something miraculous at the same time, and it's worth it, and it's turmoil, and it's joyful, and how yeah, that is exactly what the birth of my novel felt like. That's what the birth of my children feel like, and that is what I think even we can go back to the birth of a nation can be this amazingly difficult thing, which takes so much sacrifice. And I would love to see, just like I've experienced a rebirth in the last 5 years, I would love to see the United States have a rebirth where we can really, after all this struggle, come out with something so much more beautiful and new at the end. I love that word.
Yeah, and I actually feel quite strongly that's what's happening, and not just for the United States, but when I take a really big step back and look at kind of Earth and humanity as a whole, there is so much. There's a lot of talk about extinction burst right now, right? Like this, the patriarchy having its last kick at the can, and how or ego's last stand, where it's like it gets really big and smart and strong and loud right before it dies. I actually feel like that's what's happening for us right now. And I feel so excited to be witnessing that and to be, I almost feel like we're midwifing that.
Yes.
Like we're bringing this new thing in. And it is very uncomfortable and it's chaotic and it's painful. But it does, I love that you've connected it to that because it does feel like that's what we're doing. We're birthing a new or the next evolution of our, or the next version of our humanity. And I do think that's really incredible. What a time to be here.
Yes, amazing.
Yeah.
And what a way to be
Yeah.
brought together with other people too. We both have a common interest in the arts, but also a common interest in the overall health of our humanity. And I love that it's brought us together through this conversation as well.
Me too. Me too. It's one of the deepest honors of my work to do this. It's like, I can't even believe it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one last question for you, and it's a question that I ask at the end of every episode, and I call it the billboard question. So we talked a bit today throughout the show about these limiting beliefs, the ones that you absorbed and inherited when you were coming up in the world about you're this, you're smart and you're academic and this is your path. And then there are so many about that come up in your book, the role of women and girls and where our power lies. And like there, and all of these things are made up.
Yeah.
All of them. They're all made up ideas. And, but they're fed to us in such a way that they seem real.
Yeah.
They really do. They seem so real that we've internalized them. And so they keep us small. Like they seem like they're our own ideas and they keep us small. And so the billboard question is, if you had this magical billboard that any person on earth today or listening to this conversation right now who is ready for the magic could read your billboard and this little message that you were going to put on it was drop in their heart and help them to dissolve and transcend and move beyond the threshold of where those ideas hold them back. What would be the words that you would put on that billboard?
Gosh. I think the same message that I share actually in the book, and it's even in the opening page. Be true to you. And to me, what that means is that I always had that creative spirit within me. I always had that book that I needed to write within me. But as I tried to fulfill everybody else's roles that they had for me, those parts of me started to get dimmer and dimmer. And when I turned back into the true me, the creative spirit that was within me that always existed, and I fed her and I really nourished her and I gave her time to exist, that is when all of the joy bubbled up within me and all the goals were able to be fulfilled. Being true to you doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice those relationships with the people who call you mom or call you wife or call you daughter, but you can be all those things while being true to the person that you were really created to be because you were uniquely put here for a purpose and I was uniquely put here for a purpose. And letting that unique spark within us die out is a disservice to the entire world and what we were brought here to do.
That's so beautiful. Thank you,
Thank
Jamie.
you,
Thank you for
Kate. Oh,
today.
it's been such a wonderful
Yeah,
dialogue. I loved how
this was
we've
like,
really
yeah.
talked about so many subjects.
Yeah, and I kept you a little bit longer. I'm sorry about that, but there were so many great places that we went that I just wanted to go
Oh,
there.
I'm so grateful. I had nowhere to be anyway. I was so glad to have this opportunity.
So one thing I do want to make sure I ask so that your voice can tell the listeners, where can we find you? Where can we find your book? Where can we find your work? How can we learn more about you?
My book is available in all the places that people typically buy books, and if you so desire to fill the pockets of the big companies, they are there ready to sell you my book. But I love when because to me, I feel like every town, every city needs its local bookstores and its local libraries. So I love when people go into their local bookstores or their local libraries and they request that my book be ordered and they get it that way. So I strongly encourage that. My book is
Mm.
called Absorbed, and all the information about my book, including if your library or bookstore needs the ISBN number, is all available on my website. That's jamietownsend.com. And I love if people want to connect with me there. I have some of my artwork up there, and I'm on the social media sites. You can get to my different social media pages through my website as well. So just check it out.
And I'll put everything in the show notes
I
too.
love that.
So
Thank
that
you.
if you're driving down the road right now and you're listening to Jamie saying all those things, don't worry, you don't have to write it all
Yeah.
down. We got you in the show notes. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Oh, good.
I hope that I hope that somebody out there heard us talking today and decides that their dream isn't too late to pursue and internal spark deserves to be fed because I can't wait to see what they share with the world as well.
Yes to that. Yeah. Ah, thank you.